BestHotelRates.com. It's in the name. BestHotelRates.com.
Welcome back to the Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage. Need a mortgage that fits your life? Rocket can.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
We continue. It is the Jake Asman Show here on a Tuesday morning. Good to be with you. We take you to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. A reminder, if you miss any of the show, subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, sportsmapradio.com. You can always listen back to any segment you missed or any interview you missed, including the one from the last segment on the show with former Jets All-Pro wide receiver Brandon Marshall. Now, I want to get to what Marshall said specifically about the Jets and Deshaun Watson, because there is a notion out there from some on why would the Jets want Deshaun Watson, or why would even Deshaun Watson want the Jets? They only won 2 games. You know, they're a bad team. They'd be like the Texans all over again. Well, the reality is Deshaun Watson on the Jets is not a one-year plan. It's not like you're adding this guy and you expect to win the Super Bowl right away. You're solidifying the most important position in sports for at least a decade. You're building around Deshaun Watson. You don't just bring him in and he's the final piece. You spend the cap space to fix the holes on the roster. You use the remaining picks you have this year and next year to continue to lay the foundation of the team. This is not just you add Watson and you're ready to win a title. So you got to sell Deshaun Watson on the big picture stuff. And the big picture stuff of the appeal of playing in New York is something that Brandon Marshall spoke about in our interview. This was Brandon Marshall on why Deshaun Watson would be a great fit playing for the New York Jets. Why do you think, though, New York could be such a great fit for Deshaun?
I mean, it really is. It takes a special person to want to go to New York, and it also takes a special person to fit in that New York market. And I think he has that. You know, it's the biggest market in the world. Okay. And then 2, when I talk about that makeup, you know, as far as a special person, you know, you got to have that thought like, man, when's the last time they won the Super Bowl? 1960, Joe Namath, last quarterback. Like, you know, I can come in and do that. You know, if they give me what I need. So, you know, it's not going to be easy, but it's definitely possible with the right approach. So, for me, if you win in New York, I mean, you're a king around the world. Like, that's the number one media market, and I do think that Deshaun would be the one that would be up for the challenge.
Reality. Here's the reality for the Jets and Deshaun Watson. They do not need, the Jets do, to be Deshaun's number one team. They don't have to be the team that he wants to go to above any other team. They just got to be a team that Deshaun would agree to waive the no trade for. And I believe the Jets would be on that list of teams Deshaun would agree to go to in a deal. And it's why the Jets need to do whatever it takes to get Deshaun Watson if he's truly going to be made available. And I still go back and forth on just how stubborn the Texans are going to be about this. I do think when push comes to shove, by the draft, Deshaun Watson will be made available. And if you're the Jets, you go get the guy. You go get the guy because you have absolute certainty at that position for the first time, really since Joe Namath, if we're being honest. If you add Deshaun Watson, you're getting a guy that's a top 5 quarterback that only carries a salary cap hit of $10 million for this year. Plus, you have the second most salary cap space in the NFL right now. The Jets project to have about $70 million in cap room. That's before they make a couple of other cuts. They got the second most cap space in the league. Watson's cap hit for 2021 is $10.54 million. I'd argue there may not be a team in the entire NFL that's in better position to surround Deshaun Watson with talent than the Jets are, even if they got to trade both their ones this year. They still have multiple third-round picks. They still, over the next 2 seasons, have 9 picks in the first 3 rounds. So this is a team that already has Mekhi Becton in place at left tackle, has Denzel Mims on the outside, Jamison Crowder in the slot. Go sign Allen Robinson in free agency. Go sign Juju Smith-Schuster in free agency, or Kenny Galladay. Like, you have the money to do that. So, yes, the Jets are not a good team right now, But the hope would be with some competent coaching from Robert Saleh and upgrading the overall roster. And by the way, adding a top 5 quarterback to the team. In an AFC that has 7 playoff spots available, you're competing for a playoff spot year one. You are. I know people don't want to say it because they just look at the Jets 2-14. Look at the amount of games the Jets blew last year. It was 2 years ago. They did go 7-9 with Adam Gase. So there are some pieces here. Like year to year in the NFL, we see the turnaround all the time. Adding Deshaun Watson to this team is not just about next year, though. It's about the long-term big picture. And if you're Deshaun Watson and you wanted the Texans to interview Robert Saleh, well, you'll get a chance to talk to Saleh before you'd agree to waive your no trade. And that's why it would be on then Joe Douglas and Robert Saleh to sell Deshaun on the appeal of playing in New York. And Brandon Marshall could speak to it. He just outlined it. Number one media market, what it could do for your brand. I think Deshaun is the type of guy that would love playing in New York. He'd be the biggest star in New York City. He'd be bigger than James Harden or Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving. He'd be bigger than all those guys. They play for the Nets. You know, the Knicks fan is having a parade because the team's one game over 500. The Nets across town have 3 of the best players in the NBA. Nobody cares besides 7 people. Deshaun Watson, I think, would love the opportunity to play for the Jets. It might not be his number one team because, hey, he might want to go to the Dolphins more. He might want to go to this team or that team. But as long as the Jets put together the best package, the Texans could say, if you want to leave us so bad, you got to let us trade you to the team that gives us the best deal. And I don't think he'd veto a trade to New York, so it sets it up perfectly for the Jets. I understand there are some that are like, you don't want to give up so much to get him. You know what, though? If you stick with Sam Darnold or you draft the quarterback and that quarterback doesn't turn out to be good, I don't care how good the rest of your roster is. You're not winning. It's way harder to find the franchise quarterback than it is to put the pieces around him. If you trust Joe Douglas and think he's good at his job, then you have to have faith that even after making this deal, if you're the Jets, you could surround Deshaun Watson with pieces. And your salary cap space and some of the pieces you do have on this roster under contract allow you to do just that. You add Deshaun Watson and you solve your quarterback position once and for all. You add Deshaun Watson and year after year, you got a chance to go to the playoffs and contend for a title. If you roll the dice with Darnold or if you draft Zach Wilson, there's too much risk involved. I understand it will cost a lot to get Deshaun. But you know what? It's a risk worth taking. The Rams don't have any first-round picks. They've been able to build a team. Like, if you trust your GM, you hit on your mid-round picks and you build your team that way. You spend your salary cap wisely. And if you're the Jets, you're already in a division with Josh Allen. You're in a division with Bill Belichick. And the Dolphins already won 10 games this past year. Get it right at quarterback once and for all. That's why you go all in if you're the Jets. Yeah, it will cost a lot to get them. But you know what? Let's say it costs 3 first-round picks. This is why you have all this draft capital for something like this once-in-a-generation talent that becomes available. You know, the Jets could trade away, let's say, there are 2 ones this year. One of them would be the second overall pick. So you're replacing the second overall pick with Deshaun Watson, and you're replacing part 1 of a Jamal Adams trade with Deshaun. Oh, you got to trade your 1 next year. Great. You wouldn't do that for a top 5 quarterback? Kevin's helping producing the show this morning. Ask him about the Bears and their quarterback situation. You would do whatever it takes to get a guy this good. You could figure out the rest of your roster. The Bears have been able to do that. The Vikings have been able to do that, but they can't win because they don't have the quarterback. You don't win in the NFL unless you have an elite franchise quarterback. You don't win. The Dolphins have a great roster. They won 10 games. If Tua doesn't turn out to be great, they're not winning anything. Isn't that the goal? The goal is to win. And the only way you win is by having an elite quarterback. Win big. I'm not talking go 10-6 and go to the playoffs. What does that do? Tampa Bay was a good roster. They added Tom Brady. They won a Super Bowl. I mean, it's not rocket science. You need the quarterback. There's too much risk with sticking with Sam Darnold and hoping that he turns out to be very good in year 4. And it's not just about being very good. Can Sam Darnold be elite, Jet fans? That's the question you ask. Because if he can't become elite, you're not winning. You're not winning unless Sam Darnold becomes an elite quarterback. There's too much risk there. So the Jets' option at quarterback, by the way, is, to me, it's either trade for Deshaun Watson or you draft Zach Wilson or Fields and hope that those guys are as good as what Deshaun already is. That's why I'd give up whatever it takes. And I still think right now the Jets are in the absolute driver's seat, the driver's spot to get Deshaun, because if and when the Texans realize they're going to have to deal this guy, there's not a single team that can put together the better package than the Jets. That second overall pick is more valuable than anything another team can give up. Because you're talking about getting the best quarterback, not named Trevor Lawrence, in a quarterback class that might have, they're saying, 5 guys potentially go in the top 15 picks.
See, and that's the thing, too. I mean, Trevor Lawrence is a fantastic prospect, but how many times have we seen quarterback prospects that look amazing coming out of college, drafted very early, and just fall flat on their faces? The thing with Watson is that he is a surefire thing. You know exactly what you're getting. There's always an injury concern with everybody in the NFL, but you know what he is. You know what he's going to do for your team. There's no real risk involved. Give all the picks away. Give every asset you have away to be able to acquire this guy if you're the Jets or the Bears.
Totally agree.
Or anybody.
Totally agree, Kevin. And here's the thing, too. The idea that Deshaun Watson's contract makes it impossible to build a team around him. See, that's what's crazy about his contract. A lot of the money was guaranteed. The Texans paid it off. So if you acquire Deshaun Watson, you know what his cap hit for 2021 is? I just said it a couple minutes ago. It's about $10 million. The Jets have the second most cap space in the league. You add Deshaun Watson to your team, you're competing for the playoffs in year 1. By year 2, you're expected to have a chance to win a Super Bowl. See, Jet fans, we've seen the team go 9-7 and 10-6 before. But why haven't they had sustained excellence? Because they haven't had a quarterback. Get the quarterback, you can figure out the rest of the roster. Go look around the NFL. There are plenty of teams that have good rosters but don't have the quarterback that can get you over the top. Deshaun Watson is that caliber of player. If it takes trading 3 ones to get him and a couple mid-round picks, you do it. You can figure out the rest of your roster. It's way harder to find the quarterback than it is to figure out how to find a good linebacker or how to get a good secondary or add to your offensive line. Lively Report writes in 3 1s, 2 2s, and Darnold for Watson. See, I don't think, by the way, the Texans would want Sam Darnold. I don't. I think the Jets would be able to then use Darnold to recoup some of the picks. I don't think the Texans want to deal with Darnold. I think their preference would be they're going to draft a quarterback. Now, if they want Sam and that's the difference of getting the deal done, yeah, they could obviously have Sam Darnold. James DiPietro writes in, a player like Quinn Williams can't be included. Give them Sam, but not any other elite player. I seriously doubt Quinn Williams would be included in that deal. I doubt it. Because I think the Jets could just overpower them with just the draft capital they have. They got 4 1s over the next 2 years. If I said to any Jet fan, would you trade Jamal Adams for Deshaun Watson and your own draft picks? Would you do it? I think every Jet fan would say yes. So think about it in that context. I mean, the irony, of course, being that the Jets should have drafted they should have drafted Deshaun Watson over Jamal Adams in hindsight anyhow. You gotta be all in if you can get him. If you can't get him, then the option is you draft the quarterback and you trade Sam because it's too big of a risk hoping Sam Darnold figures it out in year 4. As much as I like Sam and think the Jets have failed him, you're 2-14 for a reason. You have to take advantage of the fact you're picking this high. I love the people, by the way, that say, oh, well, just stick with Sam. If it doesn't work out, get your quarterback next year. We don't know if the Jets are going to be 2-14 next year. To get Sam Darnold in the first place, they had to give away 3 second-round picks. Why have to give up anything if you can get your quarterback right now, assuming you can't get Deshaun Watson? So I continue to say it, Jet fans. The option for you at quarterback is either you trade for Deshaun or you go out there and you draft a quarterback. The only scenario where the Jets can stick with Sam Darnold is if they genuinely believe, and I find this hard to believe, that Sam is that much better than any of these quarterbacks coming out. And based on what we've seen from Sam the last 3 years, what indication do you think Robert Saleh, Mike LaFleur, and Joe Douglas, who's now been here for the last 2 years, what indication do you think they would have that Darnold's that player? Because that's the only way you could justify keeping Sam and then trading down and getting picks. If the tie, if Zach Wilson is even with Sam, if Justin Fields is even with Sam, then the tiebreaker is you get the quarterback on the rookie deal, period. That's how you got to look at it. 800-224-2004 is the number to get involved. You can find me on Twitter at Jake Asman and tweet me there. Plenty still to come in the show. We'll continue with this conversation. A lot of Jets and Texans fans engaged in the live chat. We'll get to all that coming up. Jake Asman with you here on a Tuesday morning on the Sports Map Radio Network.
The Jake Asman Show.